Thank you very much, Ram, for joining us today on this conversation on captaincy. You have played a lot of cricket. For many years, you've played cricket. And you have been an author as well of several books, not the least being Third Man. Now, I know you played with some of the finest brains in the country. You played with some of the finest cricketers in the country. So I'm going to try and pick your brains on some aspects of captaincy based on your own experience with captaincy. Let us start with you naming the best captain you have ever played with.
Thank you, Raja. Thank you for having me. And I'm making my debut on this platform. So thank you very much. The best captain I've played under would be Kamal Jaisima, one of the big thinkers on the game. And also because I learned so much about my own craft playing under him without much oral communication. Just by being with him, just by watching his own moves, just by, almost by osmosis, one learned a lot. So he was tactically the best captain I knew. No doubt about it. Of course, I admired Tiger Patoli, but I didn't play under him. And so Jay was a great inspiration as a tactician. And though he did, sometimes uh, lose control by being overwhelmed by a situation, being impatient with his own players. I mean, that was probably a small failing in him, but otherwise an absolutely brilliant captain, not only tactically but also uh, in his knowledge of the grammar of cricket. And the way he knew the angles in cricket was something amazing. And every bit of whatever I know in those respects about cricket came from Jay. And another captain who had a brilliant analytical brain and was Hanuman Singh. He played under Hanuman for State Bank of India. And he also knew the angles of cricket, and because he was also inspired by some great cricketers of the past. He played with the likes of C.K. Naidu, Mushtaq Ali, and all those people. So he had stories about them, stories about the way they captained, and he really analyzed the game. He really knew the bits and pieces of every little, the nuts and bolts of the game. And he was accused of over analyzing cricket. But I loved playing under him for State Bank. So I would say Jasima was the most brilliant analyst of the game, also statistician. Tactician that I knew. Hanumant again was a brilliant captain and very self-effacing and didn't impose himself too much on you. Slightly hands off when you were playing. I also had the good luck to play under Ajit Wadekar, who was a good captain in his own way, in a very typically Bombay style, slightly defensive, but he also let you do your thing. The captains can be very intimidating, and but all these captains, including Jay, for all the superior knowledge he had and all that, most of the time let you do what he wanted to do, and so long as you delivered what he wanted. I mean, that is very important. He gave you your field, but your field had better be his field. You learned that over time. Okay, so all these guys were. I mean, of course, at different levels, I've seen some other good captains, and I never gave it serious thought before you started today. This line of thinking. Okay, and today I've really started thinking about these captains, thanks to you. And let's think on them together today. That would be nice.
Thank you, Ram, for introducing us to some very familiar names. I'm sure you played a lot of cricket under leaders who probably never blossomed to playing first class cricket or playing for India. There would have been some names. We shall get to them for sure. I'm talking about people who you played with in club cricket, in league cricket in Hyderabad and in Madras, as we knew Chennai back then. But there were some other captains who you would have been very strongly influenced by. I know you played in the same around the same time that Prasanna led Karnataka to victory. There was also Gundappa Vishwanath, Brijesh Patel, so many Karnataka captains who were strong. there would have been captains in other parts of India who influenced your thinking. Can you share some of those names and tell us what appealed to you most about them?
First, let's talk about the South, with which I'm very familiar. And the first captain from Karnataka that I had heard a lot about was V Subramanyam, but or Subramanya. I don't know which is the correct spelling he used himself. Subbu was a very inspiring captain according to many people who played with him. And I think he masterminded the whole closing cordon theories of the southern captains. And I think uh, he in local cricket in Bangalore League and in Ranji Trophy, he was a tremendous influence on people like Prasanna and Chandrasekhar and other cricketers who played before them, other batsmen, bowlers. All of them speak very highly of him, though I've not seen much of him as a captain. When I watched him play, to me, he was a batsman rather than a captain. I don't think I probably saw one Ranji Trophy match in which he captained Karnataka. And even in that match, his batting completely dominated his captaincy or anything else in that game. Because he scored a double century against Madras, as it was called then, and put on 100 with Chandrasekhar for the last wicket. It was a masterly exhibition of using the feet against spin bowling, against somebody of the caliber of V Kumar. So the day or two after the test match in Chepauk, where he made a brilliant 51 or 61 in the second innings, 51 I think, against West Indies. His very last chance before the Indian team was picked for England. Both he and Ajit Wadekar in that match just managed to claim their berth to England by scoring after failing in many innings, batting brilliantly in that game. So, but as a captain, what I know about him is what I've heard from people like Jaisima and Patlodi and other contemporaries of his. I have a feeling, though I may be wrong, that Tiger Patlodi wanted him on that tour. It was always useful to have somebody whose brain you could pick. Like Ajit Wadekar has acknowledged the role M.L. Jaisima played in the West Indies tour of 1971 when India beat West Indies for the first time in West Indies. I have heard him say in a team meeting how much he owed Jaisima for his strategic inputs on that tour. So, like that, Subbu, I think, influenced a lot of captains down south. And I suspect both Jaisima and Patlodi benefited from knowing him and playing with him. Prasanna, I think, was a very shrewd captain. Brijesh Patel was a very shrewd captain. Rishi, contrary to what people say, was a very good captain, in my opinion, very intelligent captain. Maybe lacked that killer instinct of some others because he's too much of a gentleman. A theory to which I don't entirely subscribe. And I think, good guys can win. And I think Rishi was a good captain who unfortunately lost more than at least one Ranji Trophy final after scoring 705 runs. So that will always be held against him. Just like Gary Sobers's declaration against England, allowing Colin Cowdery and company to score 215 in a few hours. And Sobers always defended that, saying, when did England ever score at that rate? They never did. I took a gamble. I always like to err on the positive side, and I gave them a chance. Otherwise, that match would have ended in a draw. So I think Rishi, maybe he didn't have that killer instinct, but I thought he was a good captain too. Certainly, Prasanna and Brijesh Patel were both successful captains who led in Karnataka to Ranji Trophy title triumph. Prasanna, for the first time, they won the Ranji Trophy. I think Prasanna was the captain. Brijesh later. So they have more Ranji Trophy titles than any other side except Bombay. But some are the captains who probably many of our people watching this may not know. One was Balu Alaganan, who led the Madras team to its first Ranji Trophy title. Madras and Tamil Nadu won the Ranji Trophy only twice in the history of the tournament. Balu did it the first time, 1954-55. And he was, I think, an inspirational captain who was more Mike Brealey-ish than Mike Brealey himself. Because Alaganan, if you look at his average, I don't think he scored all that many runs. Even in that season when he led Madras to the title triumph, but he scored 100 in the final, in the last innings of the tournament, the second innings. He used to bat at number 10 or 9 or something, and he didn't bowl. He did pretty much nothing on the field, and he led Madras to the title triumph. But when it mattered, he got 100 when Madras we stood an outside chance of winning that match and that trophy that year against Holkar, star-studded Holkar. And he was a brilliant captain, very had tremendous people skills, and he really molded people like Kripal Singh and Gopinath and M.K. Murugesh and Sarangapani. All these people, most people would have never heard of. At least Mike really opened innings. But Alagana used to bat lower down, and in that he hardly scored in that. He had 100 against Kerala that year, or Travancore it was called, and Travancore Cochin. Kripal Singh scored his first double hundred in the Ranji Trophy, and Alagana scored 100. After that, he did very little in that season by way of scoring runs, because often he had such a good batting lineup, he never got a chance to bat as he batted lower down. But when it mattered in the final, when it seemed unlikely that Madras would pull it off, he scored in the second innings, batting at 9 or 10. And people like Murugesh and Sarangapani, they scored big in the final. And he managed to, persuade Holkar to agree to a one day's postponement of the final because Kripal Singh was writing an exam, his degree exam, and he wanted and he flew, which was a rare thing those days. Others all traveled by train. So Kripal Singh, by special dispensation, probably took his first flight, and reached the final and a postponed final, and he got wickets in the final. These were all guys who mentored by Balu Alagana in college cricket and in Ranji Trophy. And he was already an elder statesman. He retired after the championship. Next year, he was a selector. I've never known anybody else who captained one year and next year retired and became state selector. And I think Balu was that elder statesman. Very, very rare. C.D. Gopinath and A.G. Kripal Singh followed him as captains. And I didn't know much about Gopi's captaincy. I knew more about his batting, which was outstanding for Madras. And in a very short test career, he did reasonably well as a batsman, didn't get too many opportunities, and once refused to go on tour of West Indies because his professional commitments at home. Imagine anybody turning down an offer. But I think Kripal Singh was a very good strategist, a man with very good people skills who managed players like Venkat Raghavan, Deliyappa, and even Murugesh, who flowered under Balu Alagana. And all these people did well under Kripal. Of course, nobody won the title for Tamil Nadu after Balu Alagana until S. Vasudevan came along 35 years or so later. Never played under him. Played against Kripal in the local league. And I found him to be an excellent man manager. Very good tactically. Very man who thought out of the box. Some of his moves puzzled you, but they paid off. And his declarations of bringing on a certain bowler in a match, took you by surprise, but very often they worked. So at the local level, I watched him a lot. And a lovely man. There, even as a selector, national selector, I used to sit down with you like an equal and chat with you. And many players have told me that. My brother Shivaram is one who knew him as captain and selector. So he had a similar view. And I'll probably get to speak to M.K. Murugesh, who played under Kripal and Alaganan. If I can get through to him, we can probably get a bite out of him.
Hi Ram, thank you for giving me an opportunity to say a few words in your interview. You asked me about the captains I played under. I pick out 3 captains. The first captain is, of course, R.B. Alaganan, who was a bombshell announcement by the selectors as a captain for the Madras team in 1954-55. We as players were all shocked because we had expected Gopinath to be named captain, but the selectors thought otherwise. Balu had not captained any other team excepting the MCC and perhaps his college, Madras Christian College. So we knew very little about him, being a very much senior player. We had not met him, talked to him, and so we didn't know much about him. So when he was announced captain, we were all looking in askance. But when we met him, he turned out to be a perfect gentleman, a man of few words, in spite of all his wealth, a very humble person. He got along very fine with the players, talked to them with respect, and gained the respect. The result, players wanted to give the very best. On the field, he always consulted his senior players. He knew his weaknesses as a captain, so he consulted senior players and took the word and promptly followed it. The second captain, of course, under whom I played was C. D. Gopinath. I found him to be very astute captain, very knowledgeable. Main thing was that he would give the bowlers a chance to do what they want. He would always tell the bowler when he gave the ball to him, do what you have to do. Don't worry about who the batsman is. Just bowl your normal bowling. And once you have got into the rhythm, he would then tell you what to do and set the field accordingly. For example, for me, he would come and tell me that bowl this ball just outside the leg stump coming into the batsman. Give it a little of loop, and he would set the short mid-wicket accordingly. The batsman would actually come out and flick the ball into the leg side, and he would be caught by the fielder. This I learned from him, and I was always wondering how clever he was. The third captain I played under is Kirpal Singh, but not in a Ranji Trophy match. He was the captain of Paris Sports and Recreation Club team, and I was a member of Parian Company, so I was also playing with him for many, many years. He was a little different to all this. Very knowledgeable. He knew everything about cricket, but he was a little more aggressive. He played to win, and he would always set an aggressive field as compared to C. D. Gopinath. All in all, I think we had a gentleman in R. B. Alaganan, very astute captain in C. D. Gopinath, and an aggressive one in A. G. Kirpal Singh. I still feel that Kirpal missed out being a captain for India. He would have done very well.
And then Vasudevan again, with whom I played a lot. Vasu had an embarrassment of riches when he captained Tamil Nadu to the title. People like W. V. Raman, H. Ramakrishnan, Bharat Tarun, my brother, who was a senior player on the side, Robin Singh, fantastic array of talent he had under him. And made them all feel very comfortable. And he was a very easy captain to play with. I played under a captain called D. Ranganathan in Madras. He was known as Don Rangan, but he was the Don Bradman of Madras cricket. I mean, the way he carried, not his batting skills or anything, but he was a very, very interesting captain. He was a great talent spotter. Many, many cricketers of Madras have gone on record saying they owed so much to Rangan. Rangan, he had tremendous elan. He is no more now. Like many people I'm talking about today are no more, unfortunately. The great captains I mentioned, like Tiger, Jaisimha, Hanuman Singh, none of them is around. Balu is not around. Balu Laganan. Kirpal Singh is not around. Rangan is also not around. And he was quite a famous, sometimes notorious name in Madras because he used to throw very rude challenges to his opponents. Sometimes toss a coin, just pick it up and say we bat even before the opponent knew which way the coin fell. He was a tremendous character. But more often than not, Rangan's team won those games. Once he used, and before the uh, leg side rule came of two short legs behind the crease. Now you can't have more than two fielders there. I remember at least one season when I bowled with at least three fellows around the batsman behind the crease. We used to just attack the batsmen. Some of them famous names, and the bowlers would be raw young fellows whom he was blooding at the time. So that was a kind of captain. And in later conversations, many times he has told me that we won matches which we actually lost, and he was not too committed to the truth in when he told us cricket stories. But he was great fun and great playing under him because he gave you so much confidence. And he was one captain who was a wicket keeper actually. Suddenly he would take off the gloves, make somebody else keep the wickets, and used to take a long run up and bowl military medium and bully the umpire into giving him decisions. It was fantastic fun playing under him. He was one local captain I loved playing under. Yeah, that match against Salim Durrani and Venkatrao when they were playing for Jolly Rovers. Again, it was a fiery wicket. From the other end, bowled a good fast bowler of ours called Mahadevan. I was bowling off breaks, and I was trying to bowl fastish off breaks. The wicket helped bowlers like that too.
You talked about Rangan. Let me take you back to your Hyderabad club days, where you played under, I would reckon you played under P. Krishnamurthy in your State Bank days. And what kind of captaincy you saw in the Hyderabad Cricket Association League?
The first captain I played under in Hyderabad was Habib Ahmed. Didn't play much under him. He was already a very senior man, but he was a good captain, very strong and positive. I didn't play much under him, and then I played under Govind Raj, and Govind Raj was I don't have much to say about his captaincy because he was a good friend of mine, but he dropped me from the 11 most of the time, so I don't know much about his captaincy. So, but the first captain I played under regularly for State Bank of India in the league was Abid Zainul Abidin. He's a man who never played Ranji Trophy. He was a very successful captain at the junior level, and he led State Bank very well. And I played under him for a few seasons, I think, maybe 4 seasons. He was a small man, tiny, maybe 5'6" or less, around that height, already balding those days. Very trim, naturally fit person. Useful batsman who could get 30-40 runs anytime, but very unselfish in the sense he never went in early to score runs when runs were easy to get. So I always played in the interest of his side and managed beautifully. Many cricketers were more eminent than him, people who had played higher levels of cricket. He never played even Ranji Trophy, but he managed a team full of state and zone cricketers like Govind Raj, Sultan Salim, Nagesh Haman, Krishnamurthy. All of those people played under him. I played regularly under him, and I found him tactically sound, calm and collected, a very good reader of the wicket, conditions, all that. Had a very shrewd native intelligence that helped him, and we had a very strange relationship. I was his boss in the office and he was my boss on the cricket field. It sometimes led to embarrassing situations, but I think we were both cool about it because a couple of times I had to deny him something in the office and slightly nervous about what would happen in the next match, but that never happened. So he was a good captain, and then I didn't play too much under Krishnamurthy because, as I said, Abid was my constant captain in State Bank of India, and Murthy I played under a few times, but I remember him more as a mentor and somebody who encouraged me a lot. He too had a good, I think, good cricketing brain, and he learned a lot by playing under Jasimha, watching some very good captains. Mumtaz Hussain would have made an excellent captain. He was a brilliant thinker on the game. But somehow I don't remember him leading many sides in my time. He must have. I think he led Osmania to the university title, Rohinton Barrier title, when he himself got 49 wickets, which was the record for a very long time. He would have made an excellent captain because his strategic inputs were always used by other captains at Ranji Trophy level, league level.
Can we move out of South Zone and look at some captains, particularly Ashok Mankad? I remember one game, Ram, when I was growing up. You took 7 wickets in the first innings against Bombay in the quarterfinal, Ranji Trophy quarterfinal. I think Bombay was bowled out for around 225. Hyderabad got a 50-60 run first innings lead, and then Bombay managed to go on to win the game. Was it one match where Ashok Mankad became one of the shrewdest tacticians around? What is your own impression of the two captains who played in that game?
I think you touched a raw nerve because I remember every little detail of it.
I'm sorry about that. I know you did not get to bowl too much in the second innings, Ram. I think Jai was looking to have Abid and Jyoti bowling from the two ends much of the time.
I think before I get on to the captaincy blunders, strategic blunders we made in that game, I remember going into bat after we had already taken a small lead. And I was number 11, and Bobji Narasimha was batting. He made some 60 something that day. And we were trying to occupy the crease and spend time at the crease rather than score runs. If we had batted normally, we would have had a lead of 100 or more, because even Bobji, who was a well-settled batsman, was just blocking everything. Under instructions, perhaps. Something which, in hindsight, I simply can't understand. When I went into bat, Patodi said, I'll give you 100 rupees if you score 10 runs. Okay. 100 rupees is a lot of money those days because our match fee was 50 rupees. And I batted for an hour before lunch, before I got out. But I scored 9. I got out at 9, but Tiger came, when I came back, he said, take the 100 rupees, man. I know, I give it to you anyway. Many people saw him giving that money. Sportsweek wrote something factually incorrect. Actually, this is what happened. He said, if you score 10 runs, I'll give you 100 rupees. And the entire season, that was my highest score. And then, we had a lead of 59 runs. Okay. And the second innings, I had taken 7 wickets, as you said, in the first. And Bombay had a lot of debutants in that match. And Ashok Mankad was trying to protect them because I think many of them are a little overawed by, I'm not saying I was a great bowler, but for them, for debutants, he felt probably he should protect them from my bowling. So, only time in my life, first ball I bowled to him, he actually closed his eyes and me for 6 over mid-wicket. I'm not lying, I'm not exaggerating. If there was a video clip, I would be proved right. He just closed his eyes and then he went after me like that. On the other end, Mumtaz was bowling spin and he was not being attacked. Jaisima decided to play safe. Sit on our first innings lead and hope for a draw. So he changed both of us. It was okay, even if he took me off, I could understand that he took off Mumtaz as well, brought on Jyoti Prasad and Abid Ali, bowling, trying to bowl actually defensively almost everyone on the boundary line. It was inexplicable tactics. And Mankad played the innings of his life. He made 120, 130 at lightning speed. He was piercing the gap even if there were 3 men on the boundary line on the onside, he still found the gap. 3, 4 men on the boundary line. And they, I think, made 200 odd and declared with 4 wickets down. maybe 4 or 5, 3 or 4 wickets down. He made 130 something. Rahul Mankad was out first ball in the first innings, made 50. Abdul Ismail talked us all over the park, and they declared, giving us, I think, maybe 3.5 hours of batting, and we caved in. It was what shall I say, timid batting by us, and I was the last man out, and I was out to a timid shot, but I was very determined. Jyoti and I were playing. I was very determined to say, okay, I'll repeat my first innings performance. I'll stick around if Jyoti. But that particular ball, which was a long hop, leg break pitched outside the leg stump from Rakesh Tandon, and I think played half-heartedly at it and dragged it onto the stumps. Could have hit it for 4, could have done anything with it. So that was the last wicket, and we lost that game. And I think Mankad won a tactical victory. And there is one story I think Makarand Vaingankar has recorded about this. And Ashok owed that brilliant move to his father, who was walking around the boundary line. And he sent word through some fielder on the line to Ashok and said, you declare now. So the timing of the declaration was at Vinu Mankad's behest, according to what Vaingankar wrote. And he timed it perfectly, gave his bowlers enough time to bowl us out. We probably had time to even chase the target, but we never attempted it. I think Jayanti and Abbas gave a decent start, after which we just crumbled. Everyone, I think Abid made a 50, but just crumbled. So, and Jaisima has acknowledged it in print somewhere in an interview, saying it was the worst mistake of his life as a captain. And just a month earlier, he had turned the tables on Railway in a pre-quarter match. And he declared at 50 for 8 on the first morning because there was a wet spot on the wicket. Mysterious wet spot which Anil Mathur exploited. It was unplayable, and we were 50 for 8 when Jaisima declared. And then they were 65 for 7. Then the wicket improved, and there was a big partnership between two batsmen whose name, only one name I remember. His name was Shamji Dhobi. I don't remember the name of the other batsman. And they took a 220-run lead in a 3-day match, and we won the game. I believe it's a world record in a 3-day match for any team, any first class match. Team yielding a lead of 200 odd runs and winning the match. It was a brilliant victory for Jaisima. Our fast bowlers, Abid and Jyoti, polished them off in the second innings within about 3 hours after our batsman had scored at a rapid pace. So within the space of a month, he had a brilliant strategic victory and a hopeless strategic loss. And Jay has acknowledged it. He had acknowledged it as his worst captaincy, initiative. And Ashok captained brilliantly in that match, Kaka, and he was an inspirational captain who motivated his team. He was, I don't know, this was one instance of a great strategic move he made, but most of the time he played defensive, typical Bombay cricket, but he inspired his team. He gave them confidence, his batsmen and his bowlers, that they could do anything in a match, which is how Mafat Lal and Bombay won many matches under his captaincy from hopeless situations. He himself, led by example, and his players all rose to the occasion. Many people have spoken about it. I am not the first person.
We have done the whole gamut. Are there any more captains in India who stuck to you, to your mind as being innovative, as being good leaders of men, beyond the names we've already discussed?
I think we talked about Brajesh Patel, and I thought he was one brilliant thing Brajesh used to do. He was a very clever man. And I think you mentioned how clever Ajay Jadeja was. I think Brajesh was equally clever. when Prasanna and Chandra were away, they won a few matches, including these off spinners were unplayable on certain wickets because they threw. And Brajesh Patel made the best use of them. Of course, Vijay Krishna was a brilliant bowler at the other end. There were two guys who won matches for Karnataka against Hyderabad, against Tamil Nadu, on wickets which gave them some help. And they were both called by umpires. Those days, umpires could no ball a bowler. But Brajesh was so smart, he would just change ends, hoping that the other umpire would not no ball the bowler. And at least once against Hyderabad, it worked because, no, I'm not casting any aspersions. When he brought on the bowler from the other end, the umpire was Satyaji Rao, who was originally from Karnataka, and I think Brajesh was counting on him to be more lenient. And sure enough, he didn't call that bowler and he ran through us. But that strategy didn't work with PD Reporter. When Reporter captain, when he umpired, he would no-ball somebody even from his position as straight umpire. So Brajesh's tactic did not work with Reporter. But that was a very clever move on his part.
What we will now attempt is a small exercise to identify some traits in captains. See, I read this book by Sam Walker. The book is called Captain Class, and he has identified 7 traits of captains. If you identify somebody for each of these traits who you played with, played against in your own time. Let's start with doggedness. Who was the most dogged of captains?
All the Bombay captains, Ajit Wadekar, Ashok Mankad. I think it's a typical Bombay trait. They never gave up. If you see, no Bombay gave up a match. They're very, very, they play on the bats. Then even before sledging was, sledging began, he will just come and talk to you as if we are meeting at some luncheon or evening tea party or something. Hi Ram, how's it going and all that. Distract you. His, co-slip fielder or something. Isko to out karenge. In that soft voice. There was no sledging, no serious, no bad mouthing, no calling you names, no questioning your parentage. All that didn't happen. But they played smart mind games even on the umpire's mind, Things like appealing 2-3 times and, when knowing that batsman is not out and then appealing once more time, trying to look more convincing so that trying to fool the umpire. Very, very smart. This time too, they knew the captain would know the batsman is not out, but he'd give a different look to the umpire, a knowing look, saying, "Yeah, I got him this time." That sort of thing. So they're tremendous, very, very smart operators, and of course, doggedness is amazing. Typical Bombay trait. Bombay batsman's trait, bowler's trait, captain's trait. All of them had that.
Right.
Never give up.
Right. We'll talk about aggression. So one captain who you thought hallmark was aggression.
I would say Bishan Bey was a very aggressive captain. I don't know. Again, it was all his behavior was always perfect. Very aggressive gesture. Even while giving up a match, he was aggressive. He was putting questions to the whole world of cricket. He had that aggression in him. He was aggressive towards the administration. He would fight all the time for his players. He fought, I remember playing under him for, in the Irani Cup. He came and I had a stiff neck, actually caused by Bishans making me run around the ground about 25 times a day before the match. He gave me a stiff neck. But when he used to visit everybody's room. Came to my room, air-conditioned room, and with a foam mattress and a foam pillow. We just always called the hotel management and gave them a dressing down. He insisted on they giving me a hard bed and a hard pillow. He was always looking out for his men. He was really aggressive in his approach, even in looking out for the welfare of his team. So I think he's one I've seen. I can't say I've seen. Today's aggression I never see. All the body language and gesturing and all that. I didn't see much.
a willingness to be in the shadows, and to be. Everybody knows a captain's job is pretty thankless at times, and you have to work a lot in the shadows. You just spoke about vision, working with you beyond the range of the 75-yard circle. How many captains are you aware of, of having done this, not only to you but to other players, of being ready to stay in the shadows and work as well, not just in the limelight but also behind the scenes? A captain's job is behind the scenes as well. How many such captains have you seen who have made an impact on you, that they've been able to work behind the scenes?
Not somebody I played with, but top of the list would be Rahul Dravid. Of course, he was the opening batsman on the side, but it was not important for him to be the center of attraction. It never was. He was always playing for the team, and he was interested in every player's welfare. If you can just imagine, if he could write a letter to Kevin Peterson to help him with his batting. We all know about it. Imagine what he did with his own players, how much he worked with them, and he continues to work with young players, with everybody that he has had an opportunity to mentor. He did that with all his players. And have you ever heard him say one negative thing about a player he captained? There were occasions when people gave him help, both players and the administration. And we all know that he retired not a very happy man. He gave up the captaincy, not a very happy man. You never heard a word from him. He never said a thing about anybody else. But he took it all within himself, and he was the perfect gentleman. Always played for the side. And I think there's nobody to compare with him. And I also rate Anil Kumble very, very highly. Anil, I think he would fall in the same category. If you used to get angry if you dropped a catch, he didn't do that as captain. He became different, and he did not underbowl or overbowl himself. He bowled just at the right time. He used everyone in the proper manner. Fast bowler, slow bowler. I always felt India should have a bowler captain, and I can say with some pride that I wrote long before he became captain. I wrote saying we should make Kumble captain. India needs a bowler captain, because most of our captains at that time I felt never understood their bowlers very well. I used to feel that, and I think Kumble was the perfect bowlers captain, and stayed in the background. I think these two would be the best examples I know of people who didn't need to project themselves, who didn't need to make gestures on the field. The only time I've ever seen Rahul show some anger was after he scored a double-hundred in Adelaide, or where, when he did this towards the dressing room. I don't know whether it was that innings. Somebody must have hurt him badly, some commentator, and I think he was gesturing to the commentary box. You must have seen it. That's the only time I've seen him show emotion, but I think he was the perfect example of what you were talking about.
The fourth trait that Sam Walker talks about is a low-key, practical and democratic communication style. How important is it for a bowler to have a captain with a democratic style?
See, if you're a senior bowler, if you're an experienced bowler, it's very important. One of them was my younger brother, but I think I won't talk too much about it and leave it there. He was a good, gentle captain who did not captain much at the state level. Because the only time he captained the side, he led them to a title in a one-day tournament, and then retired from cricket, first-class cricket, when the Ranji Trophy season started for some personal reasons. He was recalled for the knockout, and that year they won the Ranji Trophy. But when he was recalled, he naturally did not captain, but Vasudevan captain. And Vasu fitted that bill of democratic captain, I think.
Someone who motivates others with passionate non-verbal displays. I'll share a little episode that Venkatpati Raju once told me. Obviously, India was doing well with Anil Kumble, Raju and Rajesh Chauhan picking up wicket by the bucket spoon. And I remember Raju telling me that Azhar was one such captain. He would be asked by them to stand at Silly Point and he would oblige. Even before he could get the abdomen guard from the pavilion, could be at the silly point
Yeah.
position. Uh, I think it's somebody the bowlers loved because he gave them the freedom. Somebody who was quite what we are talking about. Someone who could motivate with just a simple gesture of going and standing at silly point for the bowler's sake.
I think you have given a very good example, and I think Azhar was fearless and selfless in these matters. As a fielder, I think he put everything behind fielding as the most important thing. As a captain, he set such a tremendous example, and I think you are absolutely right. He inspired his bowlers to do their best, and I think all three spinners benefit. And unfortunately, he preferred Rajesh Chauhan to my favorite off spinner of that time, Kamaljeet Singh.
And someone who had strong conviction and with the courage to stand up, will it be Bishan who tops the list?
Absolutely. Vishan, and before him, even Sunil Gavaskar, stand up for the players against the administration. Vishan would be at the top of the list, and in his own quiet way, Tiger Putodi. And Jaisima has told me there was no one like G.S. Ramchand in those days. Jaisima cited that he was the first person to stand up for players. G.S. Ramchand.
Right. And the last trait that Sam Walker talks about is ironclad emotional control. We have called Mahendra Singh Dhoni Captain Cool. I think everybody's got on to that bandwagon of calling him Captain Cool. Talk about a little bit about Dhoni's captaincy from your perspective, and any other captain who has retained that emotional control.
Putodi never showed emotion on the field. Tiger Putodi, you never saw him angry, pleased, nothing. And he has actually regretted it. In an interview, he once said, "Wish my generation had shown a little more emotion. I think that's also important." He said that. But we all belong to the British school. Azharuddin, he didn't jump up and down. He was a cool captain that way. The man who showed the emotions in the craziest manners possible must have been Srikanth.
There were a couple of captains that I have grown up reading as being the finest. I've told Sir Frank Worrell was probably the captain of all captains, getting the balance to doing what a statesman would do. You spoke about Mike Creeley as one of the finest brains, and how we had our own Mike Creelys before Mike Creeley became Mike Creeley. What are your impressions of captain like Sir Frank Worrell and Richie Benu of Australia, maybe even Ian Chappell, with whom you've had some very fascinating interactions?
Yeah, I interviewed him once, strangely about spin bowling, and it was Chappell Prasanna being interviewed by me. Yeah, he was one of the great captains who brought out the best in his players. Worrell and Richie Beno changed the face of cricket. I mean, they were, absolutely historic figures in cricket. They changed the course of the game. Nobody was watching the game. Those days were the time when county cricket was notoriously watched by two men and a dog, as they used to say. Nobody was coming to test matches. That series in Australia, when Frank Worrell led West Indies there and Richie Beno led Australia, brought the crowds back to the ground. The two teams played some phenomenal, entertaining cricket. Every day of the series, they entertained the crowd, playing positive cricket. And Worrell shaped the lives of every boy who played under him. They were all boys when they came, and they became men. So Garfield Sobers, Wes Hall, Simo Nurse, Rohan Kenai, how many outstanding cricketers he molded. Joe Solomon, Lance Gibbs. To them all, he was a father figure. He was hardly a few years older, but he was a father figure to them. And he was tactically sound. He motivated them. He guided them the right way. His rule was no curfew, but you have to stay together. And he said, you can drink, but the team drinks together, or rather sits together. No smoking, no playing cards, because tomorrow you need your eyes. He laid such rules, but left them. There was no unnecessary discipline. And for example, Sir Gary Sobers, couldn't sleep before the morning of a match. You probably know why. Because he was driving a car when his friend Collie Smith died. And he said after that, so Gary said, every match I played for me and for Collie. He never recovered from that huge sense of guilt. And every time he was playing a match, test match, he had difficulty sleeping. What allowed him to be? He said, okay, this guy can't sleep. Let him, do. But you had to do your best on the field, and if drinking didn't agree with you, and no way you could go out like Sir Garfield Sobers. So Waddle knew, different strokes for different folks. He knew that, which is I think Ian Chappell knew that too. He treated different cricketers differently. And spinners, fast bowlers, he knew them inside out, his own men. And he could bowl a bit. He was a bit of a leg spinner, so he knew the bowler's mind. Though he was an average bowler, but he knew how to deal with bowlers, and brought out the best in people like Ashley Mallett, and of course people like Dennis Lilly and Tomo. They played a little under him, not a lot of cricket under him, and I think he really molded them. He also again was a father figure when he was very young. He always stood up on their behalf against the administration. He broke no nonsense from the administration. He told them off. He didn't care. He was again an amazing captain. Chappell, our own Tiger Patodi, Bishan Bedi, even Sunil Gavaskar. I think they all stood up for their players. And Gavaskar was not a bad captain. Not much credit is given to him as a captain. He was a good strategist, and he used his fast bowlers very well, medium pace bowlers. Made the best use of the resources available to him, like Kapil Dev and Gavri and even medium pace bowlers. Slightly in the defensive Bombay mold, but he was a successful captain. Trying a match which he knew he could not save. If he could not win the match, he said, okay, I'll try and save the match. That was his approach. He succeeded. Kapil Dev was more aggressive. Kapil, I think, was a positive captain, and he used his bowlers well, most of them. And one of the things that hardly anybody has ever noticed is he was a very smart captain when it came to underbowling himself when his knee started troubling him. Not many people noticed that he hardly bowled. He relied on the spinners more than himself during that period. But before that, he formed a terrific combination with people like Chetan Sharma and Madan Lal and Roger Binney. So all these captains had this common ability to get the men they wanted in the 11. And they delivered. More often than not, they delivered. So Kapil did that, Sunil Gavaskar did that, Tiger Patoti did that, Ajit Wadekar did that. He preferred Venkat Raman to Prasanna, and he won both in England and in West Indies and in England. And you can't say that they were wrong, because they were proved right. Every one of them got the men they wanted in the side. They got the men in whom they had confidence. They got the men who had confidence in them. But I would like to add Ravi Shastri. I've heard wonderful things about him as a captain and motivator, and everyone who's played under him has said that. I only watched him in one match, in that match in which Hirwani took 16 wickets. But he must share some of the credit for that match with the groundsman. It was an unplayable wicket, and Hirwani, it was a dream debut for Hirwani, but it was not just the way he treated Hirwani. He gave W. Raman such confidence, and I think he opened the innings. He made 81 in that match. People like Raman, Shivaramakrishnan, Bharati Arun, the coach now, all of them swear by him. And you can see that they're all part of his team long after the playing days. That kind of loyalty they all have.
In the last 45 minutes or so, I've been able to get an understanding of what Indian cricket captains were all about, where domestic captains were all about. I think it's been education, a complete pleasure. Thank you so much, Ram, for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you for thinking of me and considering me as somebody who can offer something valuable in this field. And I didn't know that myself. I knew all this about the captains I watched or played with. You brought the best out of me, and thank you so much for that.
You have been marvelous, Ram. You have been just marvelous. Thank you so much. Thank you.